So a week ago, I reacted to fan-submitted bold takes, and in about a week, I'll give my own Miami Heat-related bold takes. But now I want to just give some general NBA bold takes in an effort to try to grow the fan base of this channel a little bit. So if you are new here, hit subscribe. That being said, this intro is long enough. Let's get right into it. My first bold take, which might be the boldest one of the video. I was gonna try to rank them in terms of boldness, but I feel like I did go out there, right? A lot of people say, oh, bold take this year, Luka Doncic wins MVP when he's the damn favorite. But anyways, I think all my takes are pretty bold. My first one being that the San Antonio Spurs make the playoffs. The reason this is very bold is because just last season, they only won 22 games and they were 14th in the Western Conference. But let me tell you this, with the play-in tournament, that changes everything. I'm not saying the Spurs are going to be top 6, 7, 8 team. I currently have them at 10, according to my Western Conference standings prediction video I posted a few days ago. But I have them at 10, and I do think they have the talent to, and I guess they'll need a little bit of luck too. That's how these playing games work. But I do believe they have the talent to win a couple of those playoff games and eventually get into the NBA playoffs this season. Of course, you're having a second year out of Victor Wembanyama, and everyone is expecting phenomenal things out of him, including myself. But really what does it for me is the impact of Chris Paul, right? I don't want to understate the value of what he brings to this team. I feel like a lot of people are overlooking him just because he's, 38, 39? But what he still does at this level is facilitate and play make at an elite level. Now, we're already seeing a little bit of this in the preseason, but I expect that to get ratcheted up to a whole other level come regular season. Because you are giving Chris Paul, who's still at this very old age that he currently is, and he's old. He's out there bickering with Jimmy Butler like an old grandpa saying, get off my lawn in the preseason just a couple days ago. He is old. But do not get it twisted. That boy can still throw a pinpoint pass. Now you give him a target like Victor Wembanyama, who is 7'4", very athletic. His catch radius is probably 12, 13 feet in the air? If Chris Paul pinpoints it at that highest point, at the highest point of the arc, who else is coming down with that besides Victor Wembanyama? I think having that duo as sort of a pick and roll threat will be unstoppable, and I really look for them to spam that a dozen times a game at least during the regular season, and I think that will be enough to get them into the play-in, I guess, and then that will be enough. I guess they will need to win a couple games in the play-in, right? That's what makes it a little bit bold. And according to my standings, there's going to be a lot of good teams in the play-in, potentially the Lakers and the Warriors and even the Suns. So there will be a lot of talent in that 7 to 10 spot in the West. But I do believe the Spurs are capable of getting out of it. Now, of course, I just said maybe they go to the pick and roll, 12 to 15 times a game. That's only 15 possessions in a game that has 100. So I understand it's not a lot. I understand that because of Chris Paul's age, he probably will have to sit out a handful of games for rest and injury. He probably won't be playing 30-plus minutes a night. But I do think that that's just going to open up so much more for Victor Wembanyama in terms of his offensive potential. I mean, look at what he did last year as a rookie with no point guard. Of course, Trey Jones is decent, but for a lot of it, they were trying Jeremy Sohan at point guard. Now he's their power forward. So I really love what Chris Paul is going to bring to that team. And outside of that whole aspect, I guess, right, of me thinking, I guess the whole Chris Paul thing is really me saying he's going to allow Wemby to take a monster step this season, right? So I guess it's more centered around Wemby. And I do think Wemby is good enough to carry a team to the top 10th in his conference. But even outside of those two guys, I do feel like people are sleeping on the rest of the roster because it's not just Chris Paul and Wembanyama. At the 2 spot, they got Devin Vassell, who is one of the best shooters in the league. The only issue there is he's currently out with a foot injury, and he's going to be reevaluated in November 1st. So he's going to miss at least the first couple weeks of the season, and who knows when he comes back. But if he is able to play, that is a fit that I think is perfect next to Chris Paul because it also provides some spacing on the outside for if guys start double or triple teaming Wemby, well, now Chris Paul can find Devin Vassell, one of the most reliable shooters in the league, on the perimeter. I think that fit is great. At the starting 3 spot, they're probably going to start Harrison Barnes, another veteran that's getting slept on. I love the pickup for the Spurs. They were way too young last year. I feel like a lot of these young teams are very much undervaluing the importance of a veteran on the team. For example, the Charlotte Hornets the last several years had nobody on the roster that was older than like 26, and we know all the off-court issues that team was having. That's why I love the pickup of Taj Gibson that they brought into their roster. People are going to laugh and say, oh, Taj Gibson, what's he going to do? He's not going to play. I understand that. But I do think having a veteran presence, especially on a team that young, helps a ton with just keeping guys in line, keeping guys focused, and also the development of a team throughout that year in the course of several years, right? Maybe it's just because I'm a Heat fan and I watched Udonis Haslem do it for the last 6-7 years of his career, but it's important. The players will tell you, so I'm going to say it's important too. So now as a Spurs team with a lot of young guys, you not only have Chris Paul, but you have Harrison Barnes, who has been to the Mountaintop 4. He's won a championship before. He can still play. He's still a very, very solid 3-and-D player. I love his fit as well. You got Jeremy Sohan starting next to him at the power forward position. He's obviously very young and athletic. Then Victor Wembanyama at the center. That's a very strong starting 5. Coming off the bench, Trey Jones, very, very good facilitator. They have a guy who can run the bench unit. You got Stephon Castle, who was the 4th pick in the draft. Very good defensive guard. So now your 2 guards coming off the bench. You got Trey Jones. You got the offense with him. You got the defense with Stephon Castle. You got some versatility there. You also got Julian Champagnie, who's been a very good scorer in this league. Same with Keldon Johnson, who averaged almost 20 points per game last year. You got Zach Collins, who's a very reliable center. None of these pieces are great, but they are reliable, NBA pieces at the very least. Again, I'm not saying the Spurs teams is going to be world beaters, but at the very least, they're NBA players, and they have some versatility to fill in the holes. And I do feel like all of that put together will be good enough to get them into the 10th spot in the play-in. And then if they get a couple breaks go their way, they'll be in the NBA playoffs. That was way too long of the San Antonio Spurs. So I'm going to move to my second bold take of the video, which is the Philadelphia 76ers don't make it past the second round again, because they haven't made it out the second round. When is it? Since 2001. Damn, that's crazy. Literally since Allen Iverson stepped over Tyronn Lue in the NBA Finals, that was the last time the 76ers had made it out of the second round. Think about it. You're going on to 24 years now. So maybe that being said, this isn't a bold take considering they haven't done it, but everyone has been hyping up the 76ers for the past several years now, right? Once they got James Harden, oh, this is the year. I said, no, it's not. It wasn't. Now they got Paul George. They're saying this is the year. I'm saying, no, it's not. And I'm going to be right again. Now, they do have some other pieces that they improved upon this offseason that does interest me. Obviously, again, as a Heat fan, I like Caleb Martin. I think he's a bit overrated in terms of what he's going to provide. A lot of people that didn't watch every game last year still look at him as Eastern Conference Finals Caleb Martin. He wasn't that last year. He was just a very solid 3-and-D player that can attack the rim a little bit as well, but he is an improvement for that team. I am interested to see Yabusele. Obviously, that boy was balling with France in the Olympics, so they decided to pick him up, give him another run in the NBA after being out of the league for the last, 4 years or so. So I am curious what kind of impact he'll have, because if he can play like he did for France, that's a great pickup. And then I do love some of the young guys they got too, like Jared McCain. Although I did see he took a hard fall today in the preseason. Apparently he went to the hospital. So I do hope that everything's okay there. I guess same with Paul George too. Last we heard, his hyperextended knee was nothing too serious, but he'll need to be reevaluated as well. So hopefully both of those guys with their injuries are okay. But I also like the second round pick that the Sixers had this year, which was Adam Bona, who seems to be like one of those not very versatile bigs, but a guy that can come in and right now and play some defense. And obviously you got Joel Embiid. We don't know how many games he's going to miss, and they've never really had someone reliable to back him up outside of a couple seasons. One of those seasons, which is when they had Andre Drummond. Of course, they got him back now too. So he is a reliable bench piece along with Adam Bona, and some more depth off the bench is Eric Gordon. That guy can still score, I guess, and Kyle Lowry, I'm not a fan of, but he was okay for them last year. So they do have some pieces that make them interesting to me to maybe be better than they were last year, but I don't think they're getting out of the second round, because even the last two guys I said, Eric Gordon and Kyle Lowry, they old as hell. Let's see if their bodies hold up come playoff time. But even more so than any of that, right? Obviously, you got Tyrese Maxey, you got Joel Embiid. Those guys are studs. but their biggest issue in the playoffs the last several seasons has been Joel Embiid cannot handle the pressure. Whether he gets injured, whether he chokes, for some reason they can't get out of the second round. So what does this team do? They sign the biggest playoff choker in the league outside of James Harden. They sign playoff P. Way off P, pandemic P, I don't care what you call him. When it comes to the postseason, he is non-existent. The man had a couple good games with the Thunder, called himself playoff P, and then he was hitting the side of the backboard and has choked in every single closeout series / game since. I've had videos on it. I've looked at the numbers. He is not a playoff riser. You have playoff Jimmy and you have playoff P. Those mean two different things, and y'all know which is which. Of course, back when with the Indiana Pacers, Paul George was great on those teams, but that's when he had no pressure. That's when that team wasn't expected to do anything. But now you give him some pressure. You put him on a Clippers team with Kawhi Leonard. You put him on a Thunder team with Russell Westbrook. Now you put him on a Philly team with Joel Embiid, and they have some potential, or they have some expectations. That's when he's not going to thrive. And for that reason, I have no faith in that team getting out of the second round. And most people will say that's a hot take. We're going to move on to number 3 here, something a little bit more positive, which is my Rookie of the Year vote or prediction, which is going to go to Dalton Connect. The reason this is a bold take is because he was drafted 17th in the first round, and he's currently listed, I believe, at 7th in the voting odds, voting odds according to Hard Rock Casino. They have him at 7. So I do believe that is a bit of a hot take. Now, I love Dalton Connect. Actually, when the Heat were on the clock and took Khalil Ware, I was begging for Pat Riley to take Dalton Connect. It didn't happen. I like Khalil Ware too. But anyways, the reason I'm so high on Dalton Connect is because he is an absolute bucket, and he's very clearly a big-time player. I think he had like 6 games last year over 30 points with Tennessee, and all of them were versus major opponents, monster games versus Kentucky and Florida, and in the tournament, he was sensational as well. So when the moment gets big, he continues to rise, and as a guy who is a bit older and is a scorer, I do think those are things that help them when it comes to Rookie of the Year voting, because that's mostly a statistical category. The other thing you got to look at is the volume. I think he will have quite a bit of volume, because if you look at the Lakers depth chart, of course, you got starters, Russell, Reeves, LeBron, Hachimura, and Anthony Davis. But then in the second unit here, you got Gabe Vincent, Max Christie, Cam Reddish, and ESPN has Jared Vanderbilt as the backup 4 and 5. So of that group, Max Christie is okay. He's a decent shooter. Same thing with Gabe Vincent if healthy. He really wasn't last year. Obviously, you're not going to look at Jared Vanderbilt to score. Then you got Cam Reddish, who really wasn't great last year, right? So you're talking maybe 8, maybe 9 deep. And that doesn't include who they have listed as the third stringers right now, which is another big in Jackson Hayes. And then Bronny James, who we know is not good at basketball. And then Dalton Connect. So if I'm saying the Lakers are 7 solid deep, that to me means that there is clear opportunity for Dalton Connect to come in and contribute, especially since that team will need more shooting, they will need more scoring, and because of his age, he'll be ready to come in and compete right away. Now, the 7 guys that are ahead, or how many is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 6 guys that are ahead of Dalton Connect are number 1, Zach Edey. He's had a good preseason, but jury's still out on him, in my opinion. I don't think he's all that good, and I think once he plays a full game against versatile mobile centers, I think he'll get played off the court because of his defense. So I'm not super high on Zach Edey just yet. Second, you got Reed Shepherd, who might be the most ready one-and-done player coming out of the draft. He's certainly a great player, but there's a lot of competition in that backcourt for Houston. Obviously, you got Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green, and Amen Thompson might run a lot of point guard this year, so he's got a lot of guys to compete with. Next, you got Alexander Sarr, who is more of a defensive player, doesn't bode well for getting these kind of accolades, and he really hasn't been all that great, at least from the Summer League. I remember he was so bad in one game that he quite literally changed his number before the next game. Never seen anything like it. Then you got Zachary Richeche, who is a good player, has had a good preseason, and has opportunity. I do feel like he might be the biggest threat to Dalton Connect's Rookie of the Year candidacy, but that teams probably won't be as good as the Lakers. Won't have as much eyes on them. So I do think that bodes well for Dalton Connect. And then you got Modest Buzelis, who is a good player, but he's only 19. And of course, he's got to compete with a lot of young players in Chicago as well. I don't feel like the opportunity will be as much. And then the one right before Dalton Connect is Stephon Castle, who of course is on the Spurs. He was a great player. I think he's ready to play now, but right now he's looked at as more of a defensive guy. And again, all these accolades are really numbers based, and there's just not as many statistics that can wow you on the defensive end. So that's why that I do believe Dalton Connect can get it. Plus, he's got the Lakers aura. Everybody's looking for an excuse to give the Lakers all the awards. That's my pick to win Rookie of the Year. My fourth hot take is a couple of first-time All-Stars in each conference. Now, there's several options for both. Starting with the West, I'm not going to pick a guy like Victor Wembanyama or Chet Holmgren because they're both second-year guys. They're both probably locks to make it. At least Wemby is. A guy like J-Dub certainly could make an all-star team too. But the guy I went with in the West is Alperen Sengun. Alperen Sengun is also very young. He's only 22 years old. But the reason that I picked him is because same thing like the other accolades, MVP Rookie of the Year, All-Star is very highly numbers and statistical based. And last year, Alperen Sengun averaged 21 points, 9 rebounds, and 5 assists. I only think he's going to get better considering he's only 22 years old. And of course, that Houston Rockets team is getting better. They're getting some more talent. And as a guy in Alperen who's a great facilitator, I think his numbers in that category only make sense to get higher. And as he continues to be a better player, his numbers should go, or his scoring numbers should go up. And I just think overall, he's going to be a stat sheet stuffer. He's already a phenomenal player. I think that Rockets team record will be much better than it was last season, because of the talent they brought in, because their young guys are getting better. And of course, if you want to be an all-star, you probably got to be at least top 10 in the Western Conference. And I do think the Rockets have potential to do that this year. So the winning plus the numbers, I do think Alperen Sengun gets into the all-star game this year. From the Eastern Conference, well, I guess I should say from the West. I already said my other options like Wemby and Chet and J-Dub. Those are probably some other guys, but I wanted to shout out Alperen Sengun. Now, from the Eastern Conference, the guy that I got is Franz Wagner. A lot of the same reasons as Alperen. Of course, we expect the Magic to be a top 7 or 18 lock. They were higher than that last year. I think they were 6 or something. But with the rest of the East getting better, I'm not sure they'll be that high. But they'll be high enough to get a couple All-Stars, I think. The reason it'd be harder for Franz to make it than Alperen is because if a Rocket makes it, I think it's going to be Alperen. I don't think it'd be Jalen Green or Van Vliet or Amen. But we know that Paolo Banchero will likely make it. So for Franz to make it too, the Magic would have to have probably a top 4 or 5 record to get 2 All-Stars. Although the Lakers had 2 All-Stars last year and they were like 10th. So that goes to show it's possible, I guess. But Franz will have the numbers. He's an incredible scorer. Averaged 20 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists last year. He's only 23 years old, so it's only logical that he's going to get better. The team got more shooting now. That gives more spacing for him to attack because he's a phenomenal finisher at the rim. And I just think he's going to be a guy on a very winning team that has the numbers that can get in. The other guy that I did consider here was Evan Mobley. I think the Cavs are going to be really good, and I think he's going to take a jump this season, but he is more defensive oriented, and again, the numbers won't be as big as a guy like Franz Wagner, so that's why I picked Franz to be my first-time All-Star in the East. But speaking of Evan Mobley and the Cleveland Cavaliers, my 5th bold take is that the Cleveland Cavaliers trade one of their core 4. Now, of course, that's Garland and Mitchell and Mobley and Allen. And I will say right off the bat, I don't think that Donovan Mitchell will get traded. I don't even think he's allowed because he just signed an extension. That's another reason that Lauri Markkanen can't be traded. So if any star gets traded, it can no longer be Markkanen, who we've heard a lot of rumors about. I don't think it'll be Zach LaVine because if the Bulls would have did it, they would have did that already. It could always be Brandon Ingram, but I didn't really think that was a bold take. That's why as far as my trade bold take, I went with someone from the Cavs because we've been hearing a lot of rumors about their guys for the last couple years now. We've heard concerns about the fit between Garland and Mitchell. Of course, the fit between Mobley and Allen. I don't understand. Well, I guess I get why it doesn't work. On paper, I kind of like the idea. Garland's your facilitator. Mitchell's your go-to scorer. You got a versatile stretch the floor, or he's capable of stretching the floor big, and Evan Mobley, rim protecting, rebounding, Jared Allen. I feel like it should work, but it really hasn't as good as it should. So since you've had all these rumors, and truthfully, I don't, or in my prediction video at least, I did not have the Cavs in the top 6. I think I had them at 7 because last year I think they were obviously top 6, and I think the Heat get in there, so one team has to fall out. It's not going to be the Knicks or the Celtics or Philly in the regular season. Philly will be a good regular season team, just in the playoffs they won't. But I don't think it's going to be the Pacers. They're young and improving. I don't think it's going to be the Magic. They're young and improving. So the team I have fallen out is the Cavs. So if you come to the trade deadline and the Cavaliers are hanging around 7, 8, probably not any lower than that. Probably not any lower than 7. But if they're hanging in that area, maybe they do think it's time to make a move. If they don't like the fit with the backcourt, maybe it is Darius Garland that goes. If they don't like the fit in the front court, I think it will be Jared Allen that goes. There's a lot of teams that could use a center, like the Lakers could right now, like the Pelicans could right now. And I do think Jared Allen would have a huge trade market along with Darius Garland. So it'll probably be one of those two guys, probably not Evan Mobley, because he looks like he could be a future star in this league. And especially if he does take the jump that I expect him to take, it's going to be either Garland, it's going to be either Jared Allen. And I do think that one of those guys get traded in this season. But anyways, that's all I got to say for this video. Let me know down in the comments below which one of my takes you think was the boldest, and drop some of your bold takes below. Maybe we'll get a video out reacting to y'all NBA related bold takes. Because like I said, we already did a Miami Heat bold take related video, but I will give my Heat bold takes out after the preseason. I want to see how the last game goes on Friday, and then we'll talk about that. But anyways, if you are new here, make sure to subscribe. If you're not new here and you're not subscribed, make sure to subscribe, like the video too, because that helps the algorithm out a ton. And I'll see you on the next one. So peace out.
Look, pull up in your city, tryna get that dead face. Do it on my own, I don't need no dead weight. Had to kill him off, yeah, I need a head space. You know this homegrown bitch don't offend me.